Hi, everybody. Today is Friday, September 8th, 2023. My name is Mike Zornick, and in today's video, we're going to pick up from my previous video where I talked about the Ash framework to produce a GraphQL API and kind of get into the weeds of why I am interested in using Svelte and SvelteKit over LiveView for my upcoming side project. So, so to get started, I am interested in building some like open source courseware for people who build courses to teach people programming or other technical things. I've started creating some like Git archive, Git assets under the name StudyHall. So you can find this under the organization StudyHall projects, and there's a repo called StudyHall. Inside of there, I've started creating some decision documents, just capturing some of my early thoughts of like how I want to kind of structure this thing. And within that, we talk about architecture. So you'll see a bunch of notes about the backend, which is kind of a repeat from what you saw in the Ash video. More related to this video is the decisions made in the front end. And so what I thought I'd do is kind of like read through this and talk it out. I'm interested in using Svelte and SvelteKit over LiveView. Define a couple terms for people who don't know what these things are. So LiveView is a framework that's built on top of Phoenix, which is like the web framework that's written in the language called Elixir. And I'm a big fan of Elixir and Phoenix and LiveView, to be honest with you. And LiveView, what LiveView lets you do is build interactive and kind of real-time oriented web applications such that when your web browser, you put in an address and it fetches the page or the app, it comes back with the HTML. HTML loads the web browser, and then a WebSocket is connected to the server. And this kind of leans on Elixir-isms of processes. And you end up with this kind of like interactive experience where as you kind of click around and do things in the web browser, you send messages or events to the LiveView kind of process. It processes them, and then the DOM is changed appropriately based on how the UI rendered. It's really neat technology. I've been using it a lot in personal and client work. However, for this upcoming project, I am considering Svelte. Well, I've chosen Svelte. It's a decision. It's made. It's committed. It's in the repo. So what is Svelte and SvelteKit? So, LiveView is here in case you're interested. You can go to like the Phoenix Framework website and you can see some YouTube videos, but documentation about LiveView is right here. Svelte and SvelteKit. So Svelte is a component system in JavaScript. So it is something that helps you build components and component trees. And the kind of major distinction between Svelte and other tools like React is that it is a compiled system. So in the world of React, when you go to a website, basically a runtime is kind of installed in the browser, and it manages the components like lifecycle there and structuring the DOM and the shadow DOM and all that other stuff. Svelte is much more simple in that it's compiled. And so like you create a component, Svelte will compile it into kind of like native JavaScript that kind of just runs in the browser. And one of the benefits of this is that it creates a smaller payload. And in fact, you'll see this often in like a lot of the Svelte like tutorials and stuff. They lean on like progressive enhancement in that like HTML comes down and can work a lot without the JavaScript. But like if you tag it appropriately, it'll be like enhanced with behaviors instead of being required. But that's kind of how it works in the runtime. The other kind of interesting thing is they describe it as compact, and that basically is through how the code actually looks. So when you like write some React code, there's a lot of boilerplate and like JavaScriptisms kind of sprinkled throughout, whereas Svelte's approach is much leaner, much smaller and tighter, and so it can be a little bit more pleasant to kind of work in. And then they say complete here as the thing. So like it's got tooling for styling, scoped styling, state management, which got this really cool like writable, readable store thing where you can create these data stores and then set up like reactive updates with like the $sign all over the place. And so like as the data updates, your component will update, with it. It's also got tools for motion, form bindings, a couple other things. If you're interested, well, so that's Svelte. And then the other half of this is SvelteKit. And SvelteKit is basically everything else you kind of need to build a web app. So like Svelte itself is just components, and technically you could take the Svelte component system and put it into other things. But if you wanted to build a web application that did things like routing and handled like navigation, routing, and other other things, cookies, all that other stuff, you would kind of lean on SvelteKit to do it. And in their marketing description, they describe it as fast. They talk about what it does. So routing, SSR, so server-side rendering, which is really important. So like making sure that like if you have a URL with a lot of like things going on in it, when that initial HTML comes in, it is full, like it is a full representation of that page, which is really important for like search engines and things of that nature. And then it's got a lot of choices with regard to like how you want to run it. So you can run it like with SSR, server-side rendering, or you can do things like SPA and handle it more like a single page application where you have to kind of have JavaScript running and to do with it. Anyway, I don't want to get into the depths of SvelteKit, but that's basically what it is. If you're interested in learning about it, there's a great tutorial system at learnsvelte.dev, and it's got, basic Svelte, advanced Svelte, basic SvelteKit, advanced SvelteKit, all within this like nice experience where you can kind of like read a little tutorial, edit some HTML, click around the DOM, and really kind of like learn how it works. I went through it and it was really, helpful. So that's what's on the table, as far as my choices go. And so to get into it, I'm just going to read some of the like consequences and trade-offs that I've listed here in my thing. So the very first one is I'm interested in building some complex UI interactions, animations, and view transitions. And while it's not ridiculous to imagine using JavaScript through LiveView injections to accomplish this, there's part of me that feels like I'm going to go, if I'm going to go this route, I should just embrace the JavaScript environment for what it is. And so there are lots of tools within LiveView that can help you do very simple JavaScript injections for toggling state, or showing or hiding things, and even like integrating like legit like JavaScript libraries for things like drag and drop. That's kind of come up recently in some LiveView demos, but it is still like it's not native to the LiveView experience. It's kind of like on the fringes, and so like when you start doing it, like normal LiveView testing no longer works because it doesn't run JavaScript. And even like making sure that the JavaScript works well with the DOM, and the fact that like LiveView manages the DOM, and so you may have to start marking things as like no LiveView and have it like stay away from these areas of things. I don't know. As I said, like part of me is like I'm interested in building some like very interactive things, things like drag and drop, interactive graphs, file uploads, which happen at the client level to S3. And it's not that you can't accomplish those with LiveView. It's just it's extra work, and it's not built in, and so it feels a little weird. And I feel like if I'm going to go that route, like I want to kind of like live in that part of the system. The second part relates to the component primitives. So in recent time, LiveView has finally started to kind of like have better component primitives that let you build components that can work well and be nested. There's still some like hairiness around, again, JavaScript within components. So like it's very hard to say like here is a Phoenix component that has, stateless things that's just, about setting values. But then like if you have something with like interactivity that has a little bit of JavaScript, they're not kind of like coupled together in a unit. And so it makes it a little bit hard for like UI library authors to build things that are siloed. I don't know. I'm starting to get in a little weird space. Like, I would like to take advantage of a wide variety of UI tooling that is available in the JavaScript world that is just not comparable in the LiveView world. There are some component libraries starting to pop up. They have different levels of sophistication and maturity. I'm hopeful that they will continue to evolve, but like stepping forward today, looking to kind of like build things and kind of move fast and experiment, I don't know, I found it a little bit lacking. And it was this concept of like, if I wanted to build something, I'd have to build it myself. And I'd rather spend time crafting a customer solution than getting into the weeds of like building my own UI component library where I have to worry about accessibility and keyboard navigation and all the different browsers of the world. Like I don't want to get that into the weeds of UI. Like I want to solve problems for people, and I don't want to get into the component library production stuff myself. So yeah, that's like one reason. Number two. Number three talks a little bit about WebSockets. So LiveView is inherently built on top of WebSockets. Like it is a hard requirement. Like if you don't have WebSockets, LiveView is just not going to work. And my own concern is that like if you were building something for like an admin user where like you have a pretty strong confidence that they're sitting at a laptop, desktop, and they've got a good internet connection, they can you can have a little bit more confidence that they're going to have a good working WebSocket connection. Or the other thing is too, it's like if you're building like something that absolutely has to have real-time data, so like a chat system or something where like you're just streaming data in from like the stock market or some like observability thing, it kind of makes sense. It's like, well, for this app to be successful, you need to have a connection to the server. But for other things that like you have a form and it needs to talk to the server eventually, but if they're like on a mobile phone and they're walking in a parking garage and they get into an elevator, like that should still work. So like if they're typing in some form, like it's still save to like local storage, and then later you can kind of push it up when they actually get an internet connection. Like having those like kind of like fallback systems in place is really interesting to me, particularly if you're building an application that is going to go to a wide variety of users. Like it's not just, again, like the admin people. So that has me kind of like on the thing, because like I envision StudyHall being a much wider audience. I don't know if I can lean on WebSockets as much as I could in other application environments. All right, number 4. I'm hungry to learn new things. When I spent a summer learning Rust, it made me a better developer. If I learn other UI systems, it'll make me a better developer. Yeah, I mean, this is like, I am a proponent of people learning new languages like every year. Like even if it's not a language they're gonna like work with a lot, I feel like if you get experience in different languages, like the things you learn from them will carry over to like your main development language. Same idea. Like I've been working within LiveView pretty much exclusively for the last couple of years, so, and I've never really embraced the JavaScript like front end tools, and so like while I can contribute to a React code base and make small edits, like I've never really stood up anything from scratch. I've never really been interested in standing up anything from scratch. But going this route, I feel like I will learn a lot and it'll make me a better developer. So I'm looking forward to that. Number 5, nothing is ever final. So, one of the ideas with this kind of like architecture design is that by kind of part, drawing a line and saying I'm going to use GraphQL and I'm going to use Elixir on the back end to manage like the business domain concerns of like storage and Oban jobs to process things like emails and other things. And then having a separate front end, like you could imagine me going down a route where like I start working with Svelte and I'm like, 2 to 4 months in and I'm not liking it. I'm hitting walls and I feel like I want to jump back to LiveView or I want to try something else. Like that is possible, like within this architecture design. So I like that. And yeah, so I think that's like one. It's not really a trade-off for LiveView. It's just to say that like GraphQL, by having GraphQL there, it helps define this boundary so that way when a rewrite happens, because every successful platform, it seems like, has significant churn in core technologies, that helps define the boundary. Even specifically to, I think I get into this a little bit later, but or I did a little bit higher in the document, but like using GraphQL, like the fact that I'm using Ash to generate the GraphQL, like I plan to test with GraphQL primitives, and if I decide to like Ash isn't working out, like I can take Ash out and like I can just use Absinthe directly to kind of create the GraphQL experience and still maintain the contract I'm creating here at the platform level. I am very much interested in creating a platform where users have access to the data that they own, and by creating an API that I myself have to work through, I feel like that'll guarantee that like I give the end users the data access they need to avoid like this like cockroach motel where like data comes in but it can't go out. I want to avoid that at all costs. Like that should be a selling point to the platform, and I feel like leaning on GraphQL for that will help. I mentioned here the significant trade-off, of course, is added text complexity. So it would, there's a theory that says, if I did the whole thing in Elixir and I did LiveView as the front end, having it just be Elixir makes it simpler. And I think there is like, that is a legit, pro in LiveView's case. I feel like for me, there's enough positives of SvelteKit that I'm going to go in that direction, but like I just want to acknowledge like that trade-off. And then specifically with JavaScript and me is that like I don't have a lot of JavaScript experience, so this is definitely going to be a bit of a learning curve. I feel like it's going to be a worthwhile learning curve because JavaScript is not going away. If you want interactivity in the web browser, you have to use JavaScript. Even in my LiveView days when I took advantage of some JavaScript libraries, like I used it, but like I didn't really appreciate what was going on. Like I would, add to the jest test, but like I didn't really understand what was going on. And so I feel like spending more time in JavaScript land will again make me a better developer in the long run. And then this other kind of like trade-off list, and this is, so like one of the reasons I'm down on JavaScript in the past is that it's one of these things where there's like JavaScript frameworks come out and they're hyped up and they're used, and then 18 months later, like there's some brand new, replacement that they're like, oh, that thing is trash and you should move over to the new one. I've even worked on client apps where like they've built things, in React or React Native, and then they kind of collects dust for 3 or 4 years, and when you come back to them like to try to work with them, it's a nightmare because the dependencies have changed or they're missing, or like Node in general has changed or npm has changed. And so like there's definitely this like fear that if you go the JavaScript route, you need to be very attentive to making sure you stay up to date with things. And I see that as a general problem in the JavaScript framework world. It's not been a problem with Elixir. Like Elixir, the language, in my experience, has been very stable over the last like 5-6 years. Like there's been some improvements, but like you can grab Elixir code from a book written 5 years ago and it still holds up. LiveView does not share that property or attribute. LiveView, similarly to some of the JavaScript stuff, changes pretty rapidly. If I took the LiveView app that I had written, 2 or 3 years ago and tried to bring it in today, it's not saying you can't pull in like you can't pull in like the LiveView dependency and have it work, but like, jumping from these like different versions of LiveView requires a lot of refactoring, a lot of rethinking of how to do things, and it does not get a free pass. Like, it, along with all the JavaScript UIs, just requires a lot of attention. So I don't think there's any winner there. The poor reality is that all web UI apps and frameworks seem to require a lot of attention because they like to reinvent themselves very, very quickly. But yeah, I don't know. So that covers like the decisions made for the front end and the consequences and trade-offs and why I'm kind of leaning into Svelte over LiveView. Of course, before coming to this, I did take some time to go through the Svelte, tutorials and documentation, and even into a couple courses, and just get more familiar with it. And I liked what I saw. Like the other alternative that I kind of considered was Next.js, which is kind of like a React flavored decision of like how to do things. And there were some interesting things there, but I like the simplicity of Svelte. I like the compiled nature of it, and so I'm pretty positive on Svelte right now. Ask me that in 6 months when this project is more mature, but we'll see. And there's some other links to some very specific Svelte tools that I'll be using, including Skeleton and for UI, Houdini for GraphQL consumption, Zod and Superforms for forms and validation, and I will be writing this in TypeScript. And that is a new thing for me too. So I don't know. There was a lot in this video. It was very rambly. If you made it to the end, I thank you very much for your time. But yeah, those were some thoughts about why I'm choosing Svelte and SvelteKit over LiveView for my new StudyHall project. I don't know. Hopefully you found this interesting. If you have any feedback or comments or your own thoughts on Svelte or LiveView or any of these things, I would love to hear them. So yeah, thanks, Scott, for watching. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.